Welcome to Women's Wealth, the podcast with me, Joanne. My mission is to educate, inspire, and empower you all to step into your own life of wealth. That feeling of being so rich in your mind, body, and soul. I'm so happy to have you here. Let's get straight into it. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Women's Wealth, the podcast with me, Joanne. I'm your host. Welcome back if you are returning, and welcome if you're a new listener. Always grateful for anyone who tunes in. I'm here for you. So welcome, welcome, welcome. And I have a magical guest with me. You know I'm all about the magic. I have Magik Kathi with me today. And we're going to talk about a few things. So Kathi is an expert in gene keys, human design, and soul-centered astrology. So all of the juicy things. So welcome, Kathi. How are you?
Thank you so much, first of all, for having me, for the invitation. And yeah, I'm excited to talk about wherever it leads us. I always like to say, because I go with the flow and the energy that it wants to be out there. So yeah, let's see and let's explore.
Yeah, I am, and I'm going to jump straight in with gene keys, if that's okay.
Sure.
So I attended it was like a spiritual entrepreneur business online workshop. It was a while ago, and they were talking all about gene keys. So of course, I was brand new to this. And after the session, because I was like, what is this? So I downloaded some books and tried to listen, tried to understand. But if I'm honest, I was like, oh my God. And I was getting confused. And I was like, what's my human design? What are my gene keys? And I kind of put it on pause. So I'm excited to learn a little bit more, and I'm sure my listeners, because it's kind of floating around. I know on my Instagram it pops up a lot. So let's start there. Tell me in words that I grasp. What are your gene keys? What do they serve? What do they do? Why are we looking at them?
So my biggest passion, and it's also, my main focus in all the work that I do, and even in my own podcast, is to look at different systems of existence, as I like to call them. That's also like, yeah, the name of everything. But anyways, so I've always been really interested in different systems of existence. So basically to understand, how does reality work and how do we work and why are we even here, right? And so astrology, human design, and gene keys have been my preferred systems of uncovering the mysteries of the human body, the soul, what we are, like who we are, how everything works. And the reason I work with the gene keys is because it's a part of human design, first of all, but also it gives us a deeper layer in the connection to the human body, so the physicality of things, because for some reason that obviously a higher awareness knows, and my higher self, I've always been really fascinated with science and biology and the DNA. So as soon as someone says DNA, I'm like, I want to learn, I want to know, I want to understand how it works. So the gene keys is basically connected to my approach to astrology as well, which I've always said, your birth chart is encoded in your DNA. That's why some transits affect you more than others, but you literally feel it on a physical level. You're exhausted or you're irritated. It's because you have codes in your cells or in yourself that are connected to the planets, and based on activations, you are being activated, right? As within, so without. And so what the gene keys help us to understand is how we transform lower vibrational frequencies in our body, in our cells, in our aura, into higher states. And higher here is not better or there's no better or worse, because from a higher perspective, it's just a journey of transformation and transmutation into more light. So a lighter frequency. So we feel lighter, so we vibrate higher. And the gene keys takes you through a threefold journey. So it's the shadow expression of that gene key that moves you into the gift, and from the gift you have the ability to move into the city, which is the highest expression of that gene key. So in a similar way as in astrology, I always say, you know, there is no prediction with astrology. There's no, this is how it's going to happen. I'm not here to be a fortune teller. It's more like there are probabilities or spectrums of frequency that you could manifest, that could solidify, so to speak. And it's based on your own vibrational state. So based on how you vibrate, where you're at on the vibrational level. So you can see all placements also have a range of higher and lower density or vibration. And so, yeah, again, like the gene keys, astrology, human design, it's all basically helping you to understand where you are at with your energy, because your energy is then ultimately what determines the reality that you will, yeah, experience. Did that give you any answer, or did it make everything more complicated? I'm like, yeah.
No. It is a wide. I think the book that I downloaded was like 24 hours, something.
I mean,
I
yeah,
can't
the Gene
remember
Keys
what it was.
book, you know, when we talk about a Gene Keys book, it's not a book that you listen to from start to finish, because it highlights the 64 Gene Keys. And so you would just like, and with the Gene Keys, I have to really say, you know, even contemplating your own Gene Keys in it. So, you know, it's a thing. Like, the mind wants to understand, but it's not a book that is absorbed with the mind.
For me, my mind, when I was listening to the book, was, you must be able to understand this, because it was in the mastermind that I did. And as I was listening, I was like, I've got no idea.
And that's the thing, you know, because it's a cellular thing, the mind might understand the shadow, right? And might be like, oh yeah, that's so me. And while you listen and your mind is like, oh, I'm in the shadow and all of these things, right? Then the gift might be still something where you're like, okay, I could get that, you know, I could wrap my head around it. But when you come into the city, you're like, and it's not something that you can integrate in the mind. That's the crux of it. It's something that actually ripples into your aura and into your frequency. And you might sometimes listen to your gene key and think you haven't understood anything, but somehow something in you resonates with what you were listening to, what you were absorbing, and you're still transforming. And the ripples could, you know, happen afterwards. It's not something that changes in you because you understood it with the mind. It's because your cells are like, oh yeah, hey, I remember that, you know, and then you operate from that frequency. With, you know, when I say that, it doesn't mean that you just can, you know, listen to it and like you are changed into the city instantly. It's not how it happens. Usually it's the purification process that also, you know, gets in involvement and everything. That's why I would never recommend for someone to just listen to all the gene keys they have and, you know, be like, okay, now I get it.
Yeah. I wish I'd have spoken to you before, because they kept mentioning the gene key in this business training. And you know what, and you'll probably be able to explain better to the listeners. The way I understood it was, if we tapped into or understood what our gene key was along with our human design, we could use that then as a basis to put together our business on how we, you know, speak to customers, reach out to customers, how we build our business. So it was, I think it was called Soul Centered Business, and Gene Keys was a part of that. And it was a really good training. But like I said, when I finished, I was like, okay, so this is my human design. These are Gene Keys. I don't really know what to do with this information, and how am I going to put this into my business? Does that make sense? Would that be the
I mean, you know, the way I started with human design and astrology to a certain degree, but astrology, but human design more so, was actually because I wanted to do online marketing in a different way, because it just never really felt aligned for me, and I never understood what the problem was. And then human design came into my field, and I'm like, oh, I'm a projector. And then, oh my gosh, I'm not meant to, you know, just offer myself and like do sales. That's why it feels off. So I felt really like seen all of a sudden, and was like, oh, there's nothing wrong with me. I don't have to play this weird game that everyone else plays. I can try it out in a different way. So I started by, you know, that's always how I start, being a guinea pig to myself. And because it worked for me, I started teaching human design for business, and to help my clients, you know, basically have a more aligned strategy, if we want to call it like that, to be magnetic, because that's the whole approach to, you know, human design, the gene keys, even astrology. It's how can we have you in your most natural frequency, because that's where you are the magnet that you're meant to be. Then you attract, to say it in gene keys terms, you're fractal. So you attract your people. So you attract customers that are a hell yes, and you know, you don't need to convince them. They see, they are like, it's done. You know, they see you and it's done. You don't even have to do so much, and you don't have to, you know, have all of these sales tactics and like funnels and like all of these strategies to convince people that you are the one. It's like, no, when you are attracting the people that are meant for you and that you are meant to attract and work with, then there is no need for a specific business strategy. That's all conditioning from the old paradigm, so to speak, right? And so, yeah, that's why I love also to work with human design and also the gene keys, because it's actually it's a tool to help you or to give you assurance that you can be in your natural state and you attract.
Yeah.
Versus
Yeah, I
like
love that. And
think and like plan how I'm doing things. It's like way too complicated. Nature is not like that complicated, you know? It's only when we are not in our natural energy where the complication starts. And then we think we have to adapt, we have to change, we have to, you know, think about how we operate. And that's something that won't work, specifically moving forward, because people can read energy nowadays. You know, in the past it might have worked, but now it's like, this is fishy. Like, she just wants my money, you know?
yeah, definitely. And I totally agree with you. When I set off, I've only been working for myself for 2 years. And at the start, and this applies to everything in life, I guess, but you know, you sort of speak to people and they tell you that like you've just said, you must have your website, you must have your funnels, you must be doing this, you must be doing that. And there were certain things that I was like, that doesn't feel it, that works for some people, but that doesn't feel good in my soul. It feels like you just said, too salesy. And the more I started to learn about mostly my human design and looking more into my sun sign, moon sign, and learning more about myself there, I started to realize, well, actually, that's why it feels a little bit dirty to do it that way, because that isn't what I'm about. And like cold DMs and certain things that I was like doing the things, but really it was putting my energy so low because I didn't enjoy it. It wasn't vibrating at matching my vibration. Does that make sense? So, which is
Absolutely. What
yeah.
is your human design
So
astrology? I would love to know.
my generator, is it 5-2? 5-2, generator 5-2, and I can't remember the titles. I just have it written down in my journal. Self-motivated hero. I'm governed by the sense of smile and sacral chakra. Gut instinct as well is in there. I just have everything at the front of my journal from when I started looking at my human design. But even just reading about being a projector, a generator, I was like, oh, that's why I am as I am. That I sit back, although I get things done. That's right, isn't it? You can probably explain better for the listeners. So I'm a generator. What does that mean for the listeners if
But if
they
you're 5-2 generator, right?
5-2, yeah.
Yeah, so the second line, it's the underlying backdrop of your life. So how you navigate your energy as well. You are very much a hermit, or like you like to be, you know, like plug yourself out in order to, you know, make sense of everything, and then also in order to hear your authority, which is the sacral center, more clearly, which has a lot to do with listening to your belly, listening to what really lights me up, you know. And every time you follow something where it's not a hell yes in your sacral, I always like to say to a generator, if it doesn't feel like an orgasm, then it's just not the thing for you. And,
Yeah.
you know, that's the thing, a good analogy, you can't think your way to an orgasm.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you
Yeah, I
can,
love
but it's not the real deal, you know?
it. Yeah, exactly. Well, for me, that's how I recharge, and
Yeah.
I can spend I can spend days on my own and not even have a feeling of, oh, I haven't spoken to anyone, because, and then I'll go back out into the world and I'm fine. Whereas I have friends who are the opposite, who can't, I love putting my phone away and not looking at it for a couple of days. Sometimes, I have a business now, so I can't always do that. But on Sundays, I do not look at my phone. Whatever it is can wait. And I need that time, and I just need to shut off, and I don't, because it helps me then in the coming week, because I have to be that hermit, especially at the weekends. And when I learned that when I was reading human design, I was like, oh, okay, that's me. Because obviously you label yourself with the old paradigm. Oh, she's an introvert, she's quiet, you give yourself these labels based on what society tells shy, like thinking I'm like, well, am I shy? And I don't think that I am shy. I just come at things from a different point of view, because everything's very internal for me and with the
Yeah,
gut.
or you're
So
like, oh my gosh, am I antisocial, or am I, do I have a problem with people? Like, is there something wrong? It's like, no, I'm a second line too. I'm a 6/2. So I have that too, where I'm like realizing, wow, the idea of meeting people is sometimes more exciting than actually doing it. And then I go home and like, peace, and then I'm sometimes like, oh, how can I have these thoughts? I love people at the same time, but then also I just need a lot of time to recharge, and because I also have a lot of openness and to be in my creative flow. And it's probably the same for you. If you're not doing that, you're not in your creative flow, generally like lit up by life, because you just need that.
yeah, and it's such a nice. So for me, and if people are listening to this who haven't looked into, so we'll go on to astrology next, haven't looked into gene keys or human design, I feel like it helps to push away those labels and gives us a new perspective and a new understanding of ourselves. So we're all astrology, as we all used to, I checked my horoscopes when I was younger, and that kind of thing. We've always had that sort of running in the background. And gene keys and human design are they're quite new, well, to me. And I feel like over the past couple of years they've increased in popularity, in trainings that I've been to. But people listening to this who might feel like, oh, you might check your horoscope, but you feel a little bit stuck as to who you are and what you need to do, and where to step into the best, highest version of you, to look into these, because they are there to support, aren't they? Shed more light
Yeah,
on.
to remember, I always like to say, because as far as I've seen with my clients and, even with myself, usually it's not that you hear something completely new about yourself that you were not aware of or have not ever, thought about. It's more that these systems give you the permission in a way, or give your mind a permission to be like, okay, I can actually change and be myself. And that's gonna be safe, because I have like all of these different systems that tell me that that's actually how I am. And I was just like, so you recognize all the conditioning that you build up over life, or over your life. And it's very normal for us to do that. It's like we are building and layers and layers and become an onion, right, instead of remaining the pearl that we are when we are born, because we adapt to our environmental like conditioning. It's just what it is, but that's part of life, and the deconditioning then is also part of it. So, and we have the tools, to help us decondition. So it's a beautiful kind of like building and unbuilding. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. And let's move on to astrology. So, and I
What's
know
in
there's a lot.
astrology before we go into it?
Yeah. So, and I know a lot of people, again, I just use horoscopes as an example, but for me, I started to learn more about astrology, and it's more than the horoscope in the back of, well, people don't read magazines anymore, do they? But when I was growing up, you'd read it in the newspaper, in the magazine, and you'd sort of have a couple of lines of, oh, you're this is your star sign, so this is why you act that way. But there's a lot more to it than that. And again, over my own journey over the past couple of years, I've really started to learn that, okay, there is more to this, and there's more to it being written in the stars than, you know, that just being a phrase. So yeah, astrology. Let's dive into that. Can you look at somebody and work out their star sign? Are you very good at that?
I mean, there, you know, the reason I was actually very repelled by astrology my entire life up until I realized, yes, there is actually what I always felt more than the whole. I hate, I'm not saying I hate horoscopes, but in a way I hate them because they give people a completely weird, superficial intro into astrology because
Exactly.
it's way too general. It's, you know, I also don't like co-star and like the pattern is good in that terms, like as an app, because it's pretty spot on. But these generalized systems are just not really capturing what astrology really is because it's so much deeper. And so you really have to go with a birth chart, so a natal chart. And then you will realize, oh, the sun sign is one of the planets in the chart, but actually there's a moon sign, there's a rising sign, there's Mars, there's Venus, there's Saturn, there's so much, you know, and all of them together tell you the story of who you are. So if you would look, you know, it's like looking at a movie and only seeing the main character, but the main character doesn't have any interactions with anyone. It's like solo show on an island. So there's not a lot happening. And you're like, oh, that's someone on an island. So, and now what? Like, do you have any context? Like what's happening? Any plot? Like, is there something like going on here? Or is it just someone on an island? Like, how long do you want to watch the movie? It's boring. There's
Yeah.
no context. So you have to look at the aspects, the planets, like the interaction, and then what I say as soul-centered or evolutionary astrology, what is the storyline of the whole plot that I see when I look at that chart? And it is from, you know, it goes into the personality, which is sun, moon, and rising sign. So usually when I ask someone, I would ask you now, what's your sun, moon, and rising sign? And I would already know a specific aspect of how your personality wants to evolve in this lifetime, because it's a journey
Yeah.
from the moon sign into the sun sign. A lot of people think I am the sun sign. No, you're not. You're moving towards becoming the brightest light, becoming the sun, but usually it's hard for you to be that sun. And the rising sign helps you to become, right? It's rising in your consciousness. It helps you to become the sun. But you're more so your moon sign when you're born because it's this inner default program. And so then again, we look at all the other planets influencing that journey. How does Saturn help you, you know, master something so you can become that light? How does Pluto help you transform something so you become that light? How does, you know, your voice and your personal planets, Mars, Venus interact with that? So the feminine and the masculine in you to become that sun. So it's as you see, there's a lot to it.
A lot deeper. I feel like with the horoscopes, it's kind of like the old paradigm, the old way of living was like, we'll let them have the horoscopes, we'll let them have astrology, but we're only going to let them have surface level. We're not going to let them go any deeper. It's as if it was like permission for a little bit of magic, but only a little bit, only something very tiny to, you know, whet their appetite and not go any deeper. So I think all my signs are water signs. So I'm Scorpio sun, Capricorn moon, Cancer rising. So with that, I think I can't remember the rest. I have got my birth chart, but again, this is something I want to delve deeper into. What does it mean? So a lot of people, I'll say water signs. What does that even mean? Like what can I understand from a water sign? Does that mean that, you know, I'm emotional, you know, I love water? Like what is that in a little bit more depth again for the listeners who might be like, what is she talking about?
So Capricorn, first of all, is an earth sign, so not a water sign, even though
Okay,
it's the sea goat. Sometimes people get that mixed up, but it's
yeah,
actually an earth. So you have some earth, so you're not triple water. Otherwise, you would
yeah,
float around. So yeah, I mean, water signs are connected to emotions, to, you know, yeah, I want to say intuitive side, the yin side flowing, Scorpio really deep, right? So, and as a Cancer rising, you might be in this lifetime really challenged to learn a lot about your emotional how you process your emotions and access to your emotions, and allowing yourself to access deeper emotions. Because the Capricorn moon by nature actually has a hard time opening up to emotions. So, and as a Cancer rising, meaning that the moon rules your entire chart, you really have to learn how to access your emotions without being afraid, because they are so deep. Because the Scorpio is like the deepest, I mean, not the deep, it is the deepest water signs, let's say that. And so there's a lot of, I want to say, things that you don't want to look at, or that you don't want people to see. And so you shield your emotional world and your hermit, and being a hermit anyways. So you don't let people close to your emotional world, or you guard yourself. That's very common for Capricorn moons, because I'm a Capricorn moon myself, by the way. Like Capricorn moons, it's like you're born, you come out of the womb, and you're an adult. And you have to take care of your emotional world because no one else does. So you grow up basically instantly, and you're like, okay, yeah, I have to mature up. I have to do business. I don't have time to process emotions now. That's the Capricorn moon child, right? And so growing up, you don't really know how to access your emotions. You're like, no, I'm not going to do it, right? It's a task on the to-do list, but there's way more important things that I need to take care of. And usually that builds up. And then sometimes, we have a hard time when we have to uncover all the things that we haven't processed before. So yeah, to go back to your journey here, you really have to learn how to give yourself enough time and space to process emotions, to feel them, and to find ways to access them in the first place, because that's the thing with the Capricorn moon, where you don't even realize that you're suppressing anything. You're like, no, I'm not fine. And then somehow it bubbles up and you're like, I wasn't. How did I not see that,
Yeah, and that is so interesting, and how deep you've just brushed over in a couple of minutes. A lot more information than we get by just looking at what is a Scorpio, and it again just highlighting that there are so many layers to us and to the magic and our personalities, and the way that we deal with the world. So for anyone who's listening to this who is brand new to this, so I started my spiritual, I know everyone calls it a spiritual journey. I like to also call mine my growth journey. And I know a lot of people call it healing, but I know I probably do have healing to do. But for me, 4 or 5 years ago is when I really started this growth in learning about myself, looking more deeply into my soul. Why do I feel this way about things? How can I deal with these things better? It all stemmed from my father getting sick, and it was kind of like a door opening. So in the human world, I had this very human experience of my dad was sick and we were dealing with that. But something just opened in the other side of me, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm being pulled towards this. And I guess it helped me through the human experience. And then once that human experience was over, I was like, okay, I feel very pulled. And I'm guessing it was an intuitive nudge to go down this road and learn more about myself and help other people.
Can I
So if someone, yeah.
ask you, was that around like you were between 28 and 30?
So a little bit older. Wait, let me count. How many years ago was that? About 34. That's, yeah, 34. So yeah, a few years ago, but it was the first time in my life that I'd ever had, everyone has things happen. And when I was younger, my mum and dad were divorced, but I was very young when that happened. And up until my dad being diagnosed with cancer, I was pretty lucky, as in I still have both of my grandparents. There hadn't been any major events, as it were. And I feel like inside, when I look back, within me was my intuitive, magical self bubbling away. And, I would definitely channel, but didn't understand what I was doing, didn't understand what was going on. My friends always called me the witchy one. And, I would give witchy advice, and I don't know where it would come from, but I would just, I was doing it. I was doing the things, but didn't understand. I would do meditation, but it wasn't a meditation, and I would sit down and I would see like a whole movie being played behind my eyes, and I just thought that was normal, that's what everyone saw. And then once I started learning more about myself and, you know, all of these different aspects, I was like, oh, okay, this makes sense. This is why I've always been fascinated with the moon. Like as a child, I was always fascinated with the moon. And I would always talk to animals as well, you know, birds, and very connected to the earth. So yeah, when I started looking at these Gene Keys, human design, astrology, then that's when I started to see a bigger picture. So obviously I came in that way. So for someone that's listening who's like, I want to learn more, what would you say is the best? Because I kind of just, like I said, jumped in, listened to the books, tried to absorb all the information. For someone else to start their journey, what's your advice for them?
I mean, I would always advise, start in the most digestible and simple way, which usually means go to someone who can break it down for you so you can know what to focus on. Because again, it's not important straight from the beginning to know everything instantly. So to know all of your gene keys, all of your human design, I know the mind wants to know it all because it's like, oh, opening Pandora's box. But usually what happens, and what I do in the sessions with my clients too, it's like, what is being activated right now? Like what planet wants to stand out? What are you going through in your life, and where can we use these systems to make it practical in your day-to-day experience? And then once you've tackled, whatever you needed to tackle in that moment. So in your case, it might have been the thing with, your dad and cancer. Like, how can we see how these systems help you with that journey, right? Or if someone, doesn't know how to navigate a relationship, like how can we look at that first? And once you understood how these systems support you in that area, we might look at another area. So you don't need to look at everything instantaneously, because it might not even be, if your health is fine, why would you now look into, health astrology? It's probably not even something that interests you right now if you are not struggling with anything specifically. So I would always go with what's present in your life right now, right? Because that's why we use these systems in the first place, to see, okay, there's something that is not flowing, there's something that is not really working, or I want to improve, and then we access these systems from that perspective, instead of like looking at it, straight from basically everything. You can go into so many different directions, and then it's never ending. I mean, I'm still learning about my charts. It's like, it's always.
And it is a journey. I think I just got overexcited and I was like, oh my God, this is the world that I've been looking for. And I think again, it's the conditioning that we're told, and education. I used to be a school teacher, so I can talk about the education system of how that does condition us to information, information, information. You have to know all of this, you have to remember this, you have to be able to regurgitate all of this information. I was coming from that right, I must sit and study these, but it doesn't work that way, does it? The study is more of an experience, and like you've just said, learning and taking what you need from it at that time, rather than like I did, just let me try and learn everything.
It's the way we approach even the education system. We are conditioned that way. It's actually, even in the astrology, you can see that it's the polarity or the axis between Gemini and Sagittarius. So Gemini is Mercury ruled, like, I want to learn, know all the facts, all the details, everything, it's like binge listening to books and like just absorb, right? But it's like when you have a test and you're just like binge looking at all of the things, all the details, in order to somehow remember them the next morning, right? How most of us survived school. I mean, me anyways. And versus, which is the more intuitive way, Sagittarius, it's this like, I've lived the experience, I've learned through experience, actually. And then it's actually so much easier to like keep the knowledge, because when you just like read and read and read, most of the time we don't even remember. It's just it's not anchored, it's not integrated. It's just like I've heard it, okay, fine, move on, but it's too quick to really ripple into your aura. That's why I say, astrology, human design, gene keys, it's something that you learn through your own experience. So again, through applying it to your life and seeing how it plays out, you know. So we need some time for that. We need to, because there's no one way it manifests in people. You can have gene key 47, for example, but the way it expresses itself in you, it's different than you even read in the gene keys book, because it's very abstract, even the language that they use and how it's applicable to your life we will only be able to tell when you apply it to your life and see how it moves and changes you. And by you sharing that, for example, you help the system even to evolve because it's a new way of that energy being manifested.
Yes. And do you find that these feelings of wanting to learn more, do they come, just talk about women, I feel like through my 20s, I was, like I said, just getting on with being a human and doing all of the human things. Do you find that there is a switch, like a spiritual switch that turns on in some women once they get a little bit older, or is it any age?
I would say, I'd see it from a different perspective. I work a lot with the global movements and where we shift as a human collective. And what has been happening over, the last years is a huge global shift. So you can see it as from the higher consciousness, there's a necessity for more people to quote unquote spiritually awaken or wake up, right? And so it doesn't matter how old you are. It's actually not really connected to that. It's more a global movement that we see in the collective. And that was accelerated and still is accelerated specifically since 2012 and 2020, because we move into a new era as a human species in 2027. So we're basically very much, it's quarter to 12, so to speak. So a lot of people need to wake up. So the prophecy, quote unquote, actually, comes true. And we need more people that are aware of how our nature really works and how we can interact and create with nature, and don't be zombies sleeping anymore, because the old system is crumbling. We move out of the cross of planning into the sleeping phoenix. So it's a whole different subject, but that's why more people feel like, oh, I've spirit, like all of a sudden I'm interested in these topics. I don't even know where that came from, or people question reality. Like even my dad at some point said to me, I now know that we are all just stardust. I'm like, wow, who are you saying that, like someone who's like completely like not, thinks I'm cuckoo. I'm like, okay, there's definitely some shifts happening here in the collective. So yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting actually. It's the new earth, the old earth,
Yeah.
whether you're coming with the new earth or are you going to stay. It's funny you should mention two things there. So the two different earths. I was watching this off on a little tangent here, but there was a shift. I think it might have been 2012 or 20, one of the dates you've just said, between the new earth, and if you're on the new or the old timeline, depending on where you feel your heart is. Have you heard this online? So
I mean, it's basically, you can say it in that terms. It might challenge some of your listeners, maybe what I'm going to say, but it's not, I'm just gonna say it this way.
go on.
Basically what's happening, and we see that I think everyone can relate to what I'm about to say. We see the different versions of reality in front of our eyes, and our frequency basis, or like makes manifests it or not. Let's just say it like that. So basically, just as watching a movie, and if you are not, that character, you are not that character because you're not that character, right? But if you watch the news and you give your energy towards it, it might manifest that you become a vibrational match to that specific scenario playing out, because you don't realize it's just a probable reality that you could end up in. But what we have to do is, like, in our heart, say, that's not my reality. And that's what everyone is talking about, the split of the earth and, the new timeline. Why it is so important to focus on the heart frequencies, because the heart frequency actually is the wave, so to speak, that you create and ripple into the collective field. It's all energy, like the entire universe is based on energy. So you can think of your heart and your thoughts together as energetic vibrators that send signals into outer space and let outer space know where you are at with your vibration. And based on that, you end up in a specific timeline, or, as you say, into a specific earth, right? Because you think so, like, because there are like trillions and thousands of different earths, like probable earths, happening right now in this moment. So it's not like the new earth is somewhere in 2027, and because time doesn't exist either. So that's just a construct that we have. And so the split that everyone is talking about is you staying in your heart-centeredness, meaning that you also manifest from your own fractal, versus you living based on other people's agenda, other people's versions of Earth. Because that's the way we grow up, right? We stop following our heart impulse and vibrate on the agenda of the parents, the school, and all of that. So we are on false earth, so to speak, like straight away, right? And then we find our way back into our own version of earth.
Yeah, I love it. Oh my God, I could talk to you all day. Even just mentioning, I say all the time, pun intended, about time. Time is not a real thing. Like, I stopped, obviously I wear my watch when I teach yoga just to check on, don't teach it, just so I keep my time that way. But I just love that time, there's no such thing as time. And it's one of those things that I understand within me. And this maybe goes back to an energy, like I really understand it. But if I try to, my boyfriend partner is a scientist. So most of the conversations end in me saying, I'm not talking about this anymore to you. Because I'm like, right, well, the conversation is done, because he is very data, and obviously you can imagine he's all about the science. And if I talk to him, I'm like, time is just a construct, like we've made it up. Like there's no, and he, like, but I'm sure you can imagine, I storm off upstairs, I'm not having a talking about to you, this is it, conversation's over. But even that, and like within me, I really understand it and I really feel that. And it's such a nice feeling as well, because if I go for a walk outside, I'm like, it's so nice to understand that time doesn't exist. Time is just something that somebody one day was like, okay, this is the sunset, this is the sunrise, we're going to count all of the counts, make up these numbers in the middle to label this for us to live by. And now
I
we
think
do.
it's important, though, to say here, because it's hard to argue against time, let's just say, because what we have to see, and that's it goes with a lot of things in the world, it's a collective agreement, right? So it's not that time doesn't exist. It's just that time actually doesn't exist, but we make it existing by creating a construct that solidifies time in our perception, right?
Yeah.
So at some point we agreed collectively that we use something like time so to be able to digest a frequency of happenings, right? But actually it's just a construct that should help us to not have everything happen instantaneously. But what happened then, it was a system to help us, and now it's more a system that enslaves us. So it's about how you use that concept, or in your reality, as you said, you can just say, like, not in my reality, time doesn't have any significance. If you want to have time as a significant factor in your life, you can create that on your version of Earth. It's your reality. If you say time is important for me, then, well, here you go. You can use that construct. In a similar way, we can even use astrology. If you say, like, in my reality, astrology doesn't have an effect on me, well, let's see if that works for you. And maybe it doesn't have an impact on you. It's really just about our agreement to specific beliefs. Because everything, I mean, even Jesus in the Bible said it's all about your faith. It's all what you give faith and energy to. And so if you're like time, it's more like a stress factor, it's not helping me, then you can say, I don't want to buy into that, not in my reality. It's that was my approach to the entire, everything that happened over the last 4 years. I always said, like, not in my reality, I'm gonna get some weird illness that no one really, like, it's just not happening. I just know, and the people that were so fixated on it and were like, but this is the science and this is the thing. Well, yeah, because they just really put their belief in it, right? And then it really was a thing in their reality. But if you don't put your belief in it, then it doesn't have power.
Yeah, exactly. And I always use, like, I can't think of the names, but there's certain places in the world that they're still living, they don't have internet, electricity, the tribes. And I always think about them, because I think, right, all of this stuff that we put in our reality, that we put so much emphasis on, and like you said, over the past 4 years, they're just away living their lives how they,
They don't even know they should be concerned.
yeah, exactly. And we have all of these worries, all of the stresses, again, that we put in our own reality. And they are there just, not even, there was somebody actually went, not to one of the far off tribes, but went into, it was a documentary that I watched or a podcast, and he was with these people and he was asking them questions, and they were just laughing in his face at some of the things. It was really heartwarming, and they were, it was a reflection of, they don't care about all of this stuff. So why am I allowing this to come into my life, and allowing, why am I getting stressed about, and silly things that we get stressed about, like sitting in traffic and being late, and some of the stuff, we just allowed ourselves to shed that. And yes, I know we live in this human world and we do have to do certain things, and if you have a job, you can't be late every day, but let go of the stress of that, and don't have that in, turn up, go to work, but don't stress, don't allow it to guide you. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I feel like that's what we
it's like a baby doesn't even know what it needs to be stressed about. It just comes here and is like, there's something to be concerned about. It's just all that we learn. You should be worried about this, and you think about that, and then you have to have health insurance. You need to have a retirement thing. Like, you need to look at all of these things, and it's so complicated to be human.
Yeah.
And you're like, really?
Yeah, it is. Okay, thank you so much, Kathi. I think I could talk to you all day, honestly. Maybe we'll have to do part 2 and go
Always
into
down for it.
what would you like? So I always like to end my podcast with last words of wisdom. So your choice. What words do you want to what words do you want to leave with the listeners at the end of the podcast today?
I think really to relax more and have more fun, and see how that in itself changes your reality. I know it's hard given everything that's happening in the world, but if we come back to the present moment, most of us can be so lucky and blessed, and realize that all the stress, when we talk about time, it's just either past or future. It's never in the now. Eckhart Tolle said that, but to really get it, what he meant, it's to really understand, like, no, actually all is good. Like, the only thing that causes stress is the mind. And then asking yourself, where do these thoughts even come from? Are they even mine? Are they an old operating system? Is that something I want to tolerate in my reality? I think that's the best way to put it. And my whole approach to even my own work, it's giving people the power back over their reality, over what they experience in life, because we are the creators. We really are.
Oh, thank you. They were really good words to end with there. Thank you so much, Kathi. I really enjoyed that. And I will put all of your information in the show notes, Instagram, website, so people can reach out to you and find you there. And yeah, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for listening. And I'll see everyone in the next episode.